Let me tell you what I like. The book I've picked for today's lesson is How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, my absolute favorite drawing book of all time. So, when I was a kid, I got this book, and you can see I had to do a spiral binding on it. I used it so much, it fell apart. But this is my own personal copy that I don't know when I got it, but I've always had it. I've had it with me, and I go through it regularly, even now. So I wanted to share that with you and show you a little bit of what's on the inside. So let me share my screen and tell you a little bit about it. So, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way put together a bunch of drawing lessons in a fun and exciting way. So, instead of just picking up a boring textbook and looking at, the scale of the human body and how to draw this and that and gesture drawing and all that stuff, what better way to learn it than to use comic book characters to teach it? And of course, with the fun commentary of Stan Lee and the exciting and marvelous art of John Buscema, it was, it blew me away. So the first thing I loved about it is what I said, the awesome drawings. So dynamic, so cool. The penciling is beautiful. The dynamic composition is great. Every chapter is done like this, where you have a classic character jumping off the page, telling you what's coming next. I loved it. So being able to use that kind of art really informed me as an artist when I was trying to learn how to draw, what was expected in a drawing. And so I've mimicked this style forever, ever since. The next thing that was so beneficial to me from this book is the lessons were simple. Things were very basic and clear. It was written for my tiny brain so I could follow along, and it's visual heavy, right? So little doodles and sketches explaining the process of, for example, drawing Sue Storm's head and figuring out the proportions, or perspective. This was my first lesson on perspective. How to draw a building. Why do we need to learn to draw a building? Well, because when you got to have Spider-Man swinging around the building, that's why. So that made sense to me. And just again, looking at the simple drawings they had, the way it was explained made perfect sense to me. What's interesting, right, is a lot of these artists that worked for Marvel in the 60s and the 70s that I grew up, idolizing, they learned in a traditional art school. So they had this great artistic background that they then brought into comics, which they thought maybe wasn't such a big deal. It was just kind of pulp, unimportant comics. I mean, it was kind of a step down from the art world. What's crazy to me, though, is they were so good at it, so much better than the fine artists of their day. So, cool characters. Who doesn't want to see cool characters showing you how to draw? So here you've got Cap, Doctor Doom, The Thing. It's full of those classic 60s, 70s characters that were popular back in the day. And of course, they're drawn in dynamic form with the great pencil lines and the pencil marks to make them really stand out. And so in my head, this is just how I see drawing. I always look for characters. I look for, muscle tone, all that stuff. That's just embedded in me because I learned to draw from this book. The next thing that really stood out to me, and I recognized before I really understood what it was about, is the storytelling, the dynamic storytelling. There are a lot of pages in the book that are side by sides like this, where they show a scene and a commentary of what's happening in the scene. And on the left, you have kind of the boring version. And then on the right, you have the more dynamic, the more cinematic version. And that made sense to me. Look at the posture of the character. He's kind of just standing there, and the other guy's looking at him. It's like talking heads, blah, blah, blah. But look at how it changes when they change the angle of the camera, the direction that the guy's pointing, the camera up above looking down on his furrowed brow, his kind of, expressive of pounding his fist, turning away. All of that tells a story. And you can see a direct line between this type of, storytelling, this visual storytelling, and movies of the day, and how these artists really learned from the best films, whether it's noir or whatever was popular, they could see that and then embed that into the visuals of the comic books. That's why comics to me are like the best visual art form. You can pause, you can look, You can consider a character. You can follow the story, and the words, they come second. And then, of course, it's just got the personality of Stan the Man all through it. So you have his commentary, you have his pithy way of talking, Excelsior, his encouragement. In fact, as a kid reading through this and looking at the detail, it really made me think, wow, I could be a comic book artist. I could learn this. I could do this, and it really felt like I was getting a behind the scenes picture at what was going on there at Marvel. And this, of course, is back in the day when we didn't have the internet or anything. So there was no way really to connect with any of these artists on a regular day-to-day basis. But these books, these things, these little windows into how they worked were like a gold mine for anybody like me that was really trying to learn. So that's you know, my sample to share with you guys today of what I really think is a great, excellent drawing book. It's still in print because it's good. You can't beat it. Last shameless plug for me, I made my own little booklet, How to Draw the Scullin Way, totally ripping off and based on the ideas in Stan's book. So if you want to see mine, check it out on my website. All right, you guys, see you around the verse.